All right, welcome back from lunch. I hope everybody had a nice break and that you were able to do some great networking. We're going to get back and get started with our second half of day one of Hardwarecon 2019. This year's Hardwarecon is our 5th annual Hardwarecon event. We're thrilled to be here at the Computer History Museum and really excited about the focus, and every one of our main stage panelists and even all the folks in the breakout rooms are really focused on this advent of AI, machine learning, and data, and the implications that this is having and will have in the coming years and decades. How many people feel like they're working in something that's currently in AI? Okay, we've got a good number of folks in the house. How many people know that the term AI was coined about 60 years ago? All right, a few people do know that. You know, it's interesting in the work that I do in evaluating tech companies. You know, I work with a couple of venture groups and investment groups and the like. We hear a lot of people kind of banding about the term AI, and they do it in sometimes not truly accurate ways. I think that when we really look at what's happening today, this new advent of AI and machine learning across all of the different verticals that we're having represented here is being driven by a little bit of a perfect storm, right? We've got this great storage capacity that's happening in the cloud. We heard Dr. Ashwin Ram this morning talk about AI at Google and the Google Cloud that's enabling this. We've got the great storage capacity. We've got all of these sensors and sensors on a chip that are actually moving the way forward to collect more objective and subjective data as these fields are coming in, and clearly data is the key to creating good recursive learning and AI and deep learning and machine learning. And we have actually a number of experts and expertise in the house that's actually going to help and move us forward into the next realm of where AI and hardware is going to really help us improve humanity. And our next panel that we're going to be bringing to this main stage here is really going to be looking at exactly that. Now, this morning we had, you know, Dr. Ram on the stage talking about all the ways that Google was impacting and influencing the world and all of the different verticals that they're looking at. We had our robotics folks that were looking at, you know, all of the different ways that robots are actually helping to enhance and increase the safety of people in their jobs, and actually taking these jobs that people either can't do or don't want to do. And then we had a clean tech panel that was really amazing, an amazing and deep dive look at borrowing from different industries. And one of the things that they focused on was that they're borrowing technologies even from the healthcare industry and from these other industries, so that we can actually help to keep the planet in as good a shape as possible. Our next panel of experts is all around healthcare and the human body. And if there's ever an area of our industry that needs, come on up, folks. Healthcare in the human body. If there's ever an area of our world today that needs innovation and disruption, it's both personal health. We actually spend more money in the United States than any other developed country in the world, and we have poorer health outcomes. For the first time ever in the last few years, the average length of life in the United States is decreasing as opposed to increasing. And at the same time, you know, we're flooded with a number of innovations. Meanwhile, we have all of these sensors and new technologies coming to fruition and coming to the forefront. So I'm really pleased to actually present this panel and our group of expert panelists today. This panel is being led by a friend and colleague of mine, Dr. Joanna Schulman. Joanna is a cognitive neuroscientist who has been involved in multiple different aspects of the health industry through her long and illustrious career, most recently running a VR for healthcare company, and then starting and running the AIDIA, the IDEA Collective, that's looking particularly at how AI and other innovations are going to be moving our health and our health industries forward. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Schulman and her panel of experts for hardware and the human body.
Hi there, thanks everyone. All right, so we are going to do something a little bit different today. As opposed to us sitting here and giving our opinions, which we'd be very, very happy to do, and we are there's no dearth of words for our opinions, we thought that we would do probably what most companies want intel about, which is how do you get a technology from the stage of invention, to funding and commercialization. So in the next 30 minutes, we are going to attempt to do that with you here. And this panel of experts all represent a different part of the information chain and decision-making chain in building a company. We've got the science, I'm the business, product development, and financing. And so I am now going to turn it over to my panelists to very, very briefly, because you will see their artwork in action as they provide their expertise, to introduce themselves and to just make a short comment about what expertise they're bringing to this exercise today. Okay, Nola?
Okay, am I mic? Yes. My name is Nola Masterson. I've been in the healthcare investment arena since the early 80s. So I've seen a lot of innovation, and I've seen a lot of people waste a lot of money, and I've seen a lot of money make a lot of money. So I'm all about making money make money. That's why I'm on the panel.
My name is Dorota Shorell. I'm the CEO of Simplexity Product Development. Simplexity has a booth if you want to learn more information about the company. And we are a product development firm that helps technology companies accelerate their time to market by having a team of mechanical, electrical, software, firmware engineers on staff to develop the hardware. So we're looking at once there's an idea for a product, what do we need to do from an engineering and a development standpoint to make sure that it's feasible and that it can be manufactured in the lowest risk way possible, so that you can then scale that up into higher volume manufacturing, not just a one-off prototype. So we do everything from concept design all the way through manufacturing transfer.
And Beth Rogozinski was so kind to introduce me, so I won't go through that again. But I'm, again, Joanna Schulman, and I will be bringing to this panel sort of the business perspective. I've worked with hundreds of companies all throughout the stages of their life cycle and development, and have seen what goes incredibly right and what goes incredibly wrong. So,
I'm Dan Shapiro, one of the two Dan Shapiros that's here as a panelist today. I'm a professor at UC Santa Cruz. I've got 30 plus years working in the grand old dream of artificial intelligence, brains in a box, human level planning and reasoning capability. And more recently, I've been turning that kind of knowledge towards building novel interactive experiences as the natural customer for intelligent processing. And I'll be bringing an invention idea to the panel to kick around and see if it holds water.
Yes, any legs at all.
Any legs at all.
And in fact, that's how we're going to start. So please, Dan, as the inventor leading us into the brave new world of hardware, software, and AI, do your stuff.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about emotion from tactile input. So there's the target. We'd like to understand anger, anxiety, certainty, positivity, a few other capabilities from tactile input. So let me get the rest of this up here. So you begin with a touch device. In this case, it's a tribble instrumented with sensors. And what we'd like to be able to do is to go from touch to a vector of affect describing the emotional character of that touch. It's a great new interface modality. It's underexplored, and the goal is more tangible digital interactions. The mechanism is deep learning. I won't go into the details of it, but I have built such a system. So here's what it does. We take, as this is the very first prototype, so here's the actual fidget ball that's inside that tribble. This device takes touch input, and you're seeing me demonstrate it there, of a strong squeeze, and it turns it into lyric poetry. In this case, clouds of fear permeate all I see. Heightened nervousness threatens me. Or, similarly, I can take a gentle caressing touch, and I can turn that into a piece of, this is a song lyric, these are retrieved song lyrics. So I can turn that into, baby, if you want to be my lover, you better take me home. So the nature of this is translating touch into lyrics, in this case with matching affect, but we can do through deep learning that transformation. Okay. So that's this story. And I can talk about some potential applications that I
Well,
want to bring. but,
what is it? So you've got this great
Okay.
technology. What are you going to do with it?
Well, that's always a good question.
Yeah,
because
yeah.
So I've come up with a couple of possibilities here. So one of them is the first is in medical applications. We've got some work going on with Professor Schweitzer over at Davis, but this is a smart fidget for individuals with ADHD. And so the idea is to support self-regulation and concentration. We know that if you allow, it's a published research, we know that if you allow fidgeting in this population, they do better on tasks, and just recently we're learning that if you do hand fidgeting alone, much more socially acceptable than whole body fidgeting, you get benefits, and there's a very wide population of individuals. Similarly, dexterity training for stroke recovery, here we can look at the details of a touch signal and analyze it and start to help people with stroke recovery. So, consumer applications, there's a couple of obvious ones. A doll that responds to your child's touch. Like, who wouldn't want a doll that says, "You seem sad, do you want a hug?" Or, "Wow, that tickles," and actually, get that it was a tickling gesture. Going further, touch controllers for games. More broadly, where this technology goes is using a completely unexplored modality for communication, interaction, and even control.
So we now have our hypothetical technology, and what now?
Good question, right? Okay.
All right. So Dan comes to me and says, I've got this technology. There's been the NIH is behind it. We've got another grant coming. We think there are all these great applications. And my first question to you, Dan, would be, is this just a technology, or is this a portfolio of products that can be turned into a company?
Well, I mean, I don't strictly know that, right? That's one of the reasons why I would come to you with it. I can say that it's real. I mean, we have, that device is real. I've built that device. And there's medical study about the impact on people with ADHD, so we know that there's a real effect there.
So you've come to me, and it looks like this could be a doll, or this could be a serious medical device. Mm-hmm. And frankly, those are two completely different business models. So what do you feel from your research, from all of that, is really the application that if this was to be turned into a company, we would go after? Are we doing medical, or are we doing consumer?
Okay. What I've learned of the consumer toy business makes me very wary of it. Very, not tolerant of expenses, of anything non-trivial. Of the ADHD population and high-functioning autistic, there's a good percentage of people that are in socially difficult situations who could be greatly improved by that. So I would push on that.
All right. Well, then my obvious next question, which is the hardest thing in this medical hardware, software world, is what is the business model? Who are you going to sell it to? How much does it cost? Have you figured that out yet?
I haven't the foggiest idea.
Oh, okay. Well, in that case, we obviously need next step before we even model this out to find out from the product development side, what do you do with it from here?
Right, so I have a ton of questions for this.
You have about 3 minutes.
All right, I'll have 3 minutes worth of questions for you, Dan, here to narrow this down. So the first thing is, it looks like from your research, you've got something that kind of works and has proven something in the research lab, but it's not a product yet, correct?
That's correct.
And then in terms of what you're looking for as a medical device, it sounds like you're going to need to have some clinical trials, some proof of concept that really shows efficacy, that this is going to work in the medical applications, so that you can get that certification that says, yes, it's medical, not just
So we have data coming in from an NIH-funded
Okay.
study that is with this population showing benefits towards concentration on standard tests.
Right, and so you've got this one prototype that you've made, and it's tethered, and you're envisioning that you need a multiple number of kind of proof of concept prototypes to put in users' hands?
That's right. We need to scale up and put it in with do a study of 50 or 150 individuals.
Okay, and so right now you have it where it's not battery powered, it's powered via the
That's
cable?
correct.
Do you want these to be battery powered?
I think it would be much more useful if they were, sure.
Okay, so power is going to be a big deal, and then the question is on the AI and the learning side, are you going to do the learning on something else, or are these also going to learn? Because there's different parts when you look at, you have part of the AI that's actually doing all the learning, and that's very computing intensive, which means you need a big processor, you need a big battery, or it needs to be powered. Or what we usually recommend is you do the learning on one thing, and then once you have the learning, then you would put that on the device. You'd have a smaller embedded chip.
Put the performance system on the device.
Correct, and it's a lot like what you guys are aware of in terms of things that do the cloud computing in the cloud. But so the device can be smaller, it can be more lightweight, and it can be less expensive, because I assume you don't want to basically have it the cost of a smartphone, but something that would be cheaper, and that's also going to be a question on the financing side. So really trying to define what that architecture is key as to where are you doing the learning, on the device, on the cloud, through a separate system, and these prototypes that you're going to give to people, what are you trying to do with them, so we can figure out what is the right architecture for that.
Yeah, so we're sort of at a juncture right here, because we don't even know what the business model is. So we might need to, this is beginning to sound more and more expensive as far as a venture, something that if you decide to go the grant route, it might take the next 13 or 14 years. And if, you really feel that this is the next hot thing, and you have convinced me, I have always wanted a Tribble that talked. So just personally, I'm sold. But I think that we need to begin reaching out to all of our business colleagues to see if anybody else thinks this is as great as we do, and especially to those who are involved in investment, because they are going to see things from a very different standpoint. So perhaps you heard, the choices that we need to make, Nola, as far as product development, the markets. What is it that we need to do right now to impress you?
Well, Dan, you have to first explain, do you have any patents around this technology? Is it protected in any way?
It is protected by idiosyncrasy power. No one else in their right mind has thought of this.
Power?
Yeah.
I haven't heard that one before.
So this is published work. It would be, the IP would be encumbered by the university. There is, but it is know-how right now that is the only protection.
So
no patent.
you got to have freedom to operate, Dan. And if it's still in the university and the university hasn't given you rights to license.
Oh, the university will be fine, happy to license anything. It's very common, though, that like this will need a new rev in order to take it into a business setting. That rev will change the technology some, and as a result, I think it's unlikely to be strongly encumbered by the university. They might demand a small license.
Okay, well, you have to look into that before you do anything else. That you have freedom to operate and you own your technology. And then you need to patent something around it so that I have some feeling that if you go away, I have some intellectual property I can sell to the next highest bidder. Because that's going to be what I'm going to invest in at this stage of the game, because you don't have a business model, you don't have any proof of concept, you don't have, your prototype is in a study at NIH with how many patients?
About 35.
35, so, that's great, but ADHD and ADD and, that's a huge population. So you're going to need a much bigger population if you're going to go after that to give any proof of concept that it works. And do you have any idea what that would look like?
Sure. So we'd need to scale up, I think it would be about 150 patients. You'd want to do that both with neuronormals and then people that are affected by ADHD or high-functioning autism. You might segment that with adults and with young adults. So there's a bit of a marketing decision inside there. And then there's two forms of tests. One of them is basically scaling up the current study, which is to sort of a laboratory environment, and the other would be to put it out more on the web, with people that have those devices where they're working a problem, but in the comfort of their own home, so more of a natural setting. I would want to do those two things.
Is this going to be something that you're going to want to get reimbursement for?
Yeah.
If it's a medical
I mean, now
device?
that's a
Boom,
whole nother
okay.
question.
So
right?
now
So
we have bumped up against
yeah.
the biggest issue in digital health and for these devices, and especially these software-hardware combos. What is the business model? You can make something, you can make it even cost effectively, you can make the most perfect thing, you can prove that it works. But in the healthcare world, there is a whole other set of hurdles and decisions. Is this something that, parents get their kids? And this is the first thing I, as a business person, would ask. Do you see this going, through the various networks of support groups for, parents who are looking for new tools? Or is this something that is in schools? Or is this something that, comes via some kind of subscription or prescription model? Would you go for reimbursement? And, what would that entail? So I guess then my question for both of you, given that Dan is perplexed at the moment and doesn't quite have an answer, my question for both of you would be, what is, in developing the product and the prototype to test, is there a difference between what you would need to do if it was being tested and for reimbursement or not, and then from a funding level, which is more attractive?
From a development standpoint, it's less of the reimbursement question, but the medical device, and if you're going to get FDA certification, in which case you need a design history file that you have. So from the beginning of development, we do both consumer and medical products. So on the consumer side, we can do it very fast, and because you don't have to have the paper trail and the documentation. On the medical side, it takes longer. It's done inside a quality system, and then there's a set of documentation. There's a formal risk analysis. There's a lot of things that have to be done ahead of time, a formal project plan. In consumer product development, you can just build stuff, put it out there, see it, try it, hand it to people and see, but there's no proof for the FDA. So it's a slower development cycle. It's a longer development cycle, and it does cost about maybe 20, 30% more because you need that whole paper trail to do that. So that is a decision you want to make ahead of time if possible. We have seen people that have tried to do both medical and consumer, but if you are thinking it is medical, you want to set yourself up for success because you're going to need that documentation as you go through the design cycles.
And from a financing standpoint, if somebody said, oh, we can do this and it demonstrate efficacy and get it through, get it distributed, via the mother support net, the parent support networks and the schools and the training centers, et cetera, or as a medical device, what is one more attractive, or what are the questions that you would ask next?
Well, for an investor, the shorter time I have to put my capital at risk, the better. So, if you can get this out and not have it have to go through the FDA, more power to you. I really question, though, as an investor, have you nailed a problem that you really think you can solve, and then can you scale it, because the ADHD population is huge.
Yeah.
And what's going to be the cost of acquisition for the patient, or how, what's the mode of, there's going to be a lot of need to spend a considerable amount of money up front. So I really wonder who's the team here. Is it just you, Dan, or do you have somebody like Dorota? Do you have a business consultant like Joanna? I'm going to invest in people now. I got the idea, but who's your team?
Well, I think we got somebody, somebody on the hook here, right?
Yeah, maybe
All right,
so.
so our team here, which is our Furby technology company at the moment, the three of us, we need to, at least ask, put an ask through. And so what do we even think? If to answer the questions that Nola just posed, to test it, to find that fit with the community that it is meant for, to do that market analysis and figure out how you are going to get it out and make the convincing argument that you can de-risk that capital somehow, what is it going to take? What do we need for initial financing to take this even to that stage of next go, no go? Dorota?
Well, we would phase this project because we want to be respectful of the fact that you probably don't have $10 million in capital to work with, that you're trying to raise the capital. So we would say, what is the minimum viable product? And you, most of you probably know that terminology, to get you to the point of getting efficacy and to prove that it is going to be viable. So we want to build something that is not the final product, because that's going to take a lot more investment, but get to those early phases of development where we can say, okay, what are the things, maybe we don't have to worry about power, maybe it can be slightly bigger, you know, there might be some things that you can do to shortcut the initial process to get to that MVP, that later we'll say, okay, we can make it smaller, we can make it higher, or we can add these features in the future. And so that will, those few phases, I mean, just, again, we'd need to understand a lot more as to, you know, is there still invention in the design, or is it basically take a microprocessor, take some electronics, make a custom board, throw it in the middle, and you know, maybe make some custom tools? If it's no invention involved, then it's probably in the few hundred thousands of dollars to get to there, call it 300 as a wild guess, to get to, hey, we need this many prototypes, and then later after that, funding and you prove it, then there'd be the full commercialization and getting it into manufacturing. So that would be a separate development phase. So the question is how much you want to ask for when, and we usually recommend ask for what you need to get to the next phase.
Well, I think the right landmark, the right milestone for this would be to rev the hardware, build a device that's capable of doing both prediction and recommendation for people with ADHD, to help them concentrate and show at a moderate scale that that's usable in a natural environment to benefit. So that's a study, and I've actually done some estimating of that. I think that's on the order of $750K, $1 million in order to put that together.
So I think altogether we have about $1 million, but there will of course be the phase 2 grant of the NIH grant coming in, so that can mitigate, and it also provides another cushion to investors to say, well, we are going to ask for $1 million, but we've got $500,000 in research dollars coming in that are non-dilutive funding. So let's go ahead. Nola,
But Dan,
what do you think?
Dan, do you have a company set up, or am I just funding research at the university here?
So honestly, it is research at the university now.
Into a company.
But that's moving into a company, and
Yes.
you know, I have a long
Yes.
history with Joanna here, who can
I
facilitate
can
that
attest.
process.
For him.
So you know
for
you're
him.
going to set up something in Delaware that's
Yes.
an S Corp or a C
Yes.
Corp, because I don't do LLCs.
Okay.
Okay, you know you're going to get a team of somebody, if Joanna and Dorota, that's okay in the beginning, but you got to get it out of the university, so you got to get your license from the university, and you got to set it up, because otherwise, I don't fund research, that's the NIH's job.
And so if he has the company, he's got that initial plan, it goes to proof of concept, he's asking for, you know, $1 million in seed, and he goes and says, Nola, I think you really love this idea. Are you going to fund me?
I have an angel group I'm going to invest with, and I'm going to ask you to present to them, because, you know, I'm an N of 1. I need to have more eyes on this goal and have somebody else collaborate with me and take some of the financial risk. So we've got, you know, Golden Seeds and Astia and Portfolio, a lot of angel groups in the Valley. If you have a woman on your team, I'll have a lot more love for you if you do.
We got some women engineers.
Well, are you on the team? Or are you just-
we're officially on the team.
We're on the
now.
team now.
Okay.
Yeah,
All
we're
right.
joining for
There you
Happens
go.
quickly.
And so is there, you know, and this is our final question that we'll discuss until we ask you to come forward with a couple of questions. So Dan is preparing, he's the inventor, he's got his virtual team, and he is presenting. What is it? What is that package of information that you would require now?
Oh, you know, the whole due diligence package is going to mean the license from the university, the parameters around what this is going to cost. When's the next milestone that I can fund? What do I see for that? And then really, who are the people, and what's it going to take ultimately to get to market? Because I don't just fund projects.
Yeah.
I fund companies. And what's your big company's strategy? You know, where's your business plan?
Yes, exactly. And I think that that is probably has been the hardest lesson for many of the companies that I've worked with, that investors and partners fund companies, not projects. So with that, we will open it up. If you have any questions about, this marvelous technology and where it goes next, please, the floor is yours. Yes.
So just a question for, is it Dan?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there an SMVP, a sub-minimum viable product that would be less expensive and you could start as a Kickstarter project?
As a Kickstarter, you bet. We could roll out that fidget ball that we've already got and start putting it in people's hands to get anecdotal evidence that it's helping individuals with ADHD concentrate. You bet. We could do that now. Good idea.
What's the FDA's position on deep learning models, given that they change through learning and the FDA doesn't really like things to change?
The FDA doesn't know.
Yeah.
The FDA is never ahead of the technology. It's always being taught by the people that bring products to them.
And this has been this debate for some time, and I think it really depends on how the algorithms are being used. But in December of 2016, our Congress passed the 21st Century Cures Act, which finally gave the definitive, because nothing with the FDA is ever definitive, guidelines on what is regulated as far as digital health. And it gave tremendous latitude for exemptions, including technologies which are mostly, analytical and AI technologies that can be used to predict conditions and or make treatment recommendations. So the FDA, so in fact, AI is very gray, and on its own, it is exempted.
Hi, this is question for Dan. How was your experience with NIH funding, and did you hire any particular agency for that, or you did it on your own? And how long did it take? Thank you.
Okay.
My experience has actually been quite good. They have, it was done through academics and as a collaboration across several different universities. Straightforward, put in the proposal process. The timeline is a little slow. 4 months before they even review it, and another 5 or 6 months until the money starts to flow. And that was for what amounts to seed funding, like a fast track, let's get started grant with the phase 2 with an actual grant for more significant money to follow. So.
Thank you. Great. I'm sorry, we've got these like major lights going here,
Yeah,
so we
it's all
can't
right.
see you.
We'll squint. Yeah.
I'm curious about possibly doing a hybrid approach where you develop this both as a consumer product and both as a FDA-regulated device. Would you invest in that? Would you develop along that track? And would you operate along that track, and advantages and disadvantages of that approach?
That's great.
In terms of the development, we certainly can. It's going to be, if you end up going the consumer path, you've paid for some of the medical that you probably wouldn't need to, but if you're trying to hedge your bets and you have the funding, you certainly can. And we have products we've done that are consumer products that then, kind of transition. It's better if you plan ahead of time, but it is from a development standpoint completely reasonable. You just have to define who your users are and what those product requirements are. If a consumer product needs to retail for $19.99, but the medical product can be $49.99 or $200, there's a difference in terms of the performance that we can achieve. So we need to kind of at least get in the ballpark so we know what technology to put in there.
And from the business standpoint, while it's easier on the product, you just sort of make one set of requirements or another, I would probably out-license or partner the technology for consumer purposes. If the company is intended to develop medical or medical-grade products, it means having an entire advisory board, scientific board, an entire structure in the company to be able to support that and deliver on that. And that's very different than consumer. So while the technology might be a crossover, I think if from a business standpoint, the most profitable way to capitalize on that would be to out-license or partner the consumer applications.
And from my investment thesis, I am a healthcare investor. So if it was going to go over to the consumer side, I wouldn't have any interest in it. As a nerd, I have a lot of interest in where is this going to be applied that it really traction meets. But as an investor, I have a fiduciary responsibility to stick with my investment thesis, which is to fund healthcare.
Great. Anybody else? I think we are perfectly on time. So thank you all for indulging us as we talk through this wonderful new technology, and look for Dan's now Kickstarter campaign with a wonderful suggestion from over here.
Right. There will be a fidget ball and a Furby with piezoelectric fur in every home.
Yeah, there. Thank you.
All right, thank you.